Hey y'all, hey, it's T back again, and I wanted to talk about a financial topic today because I haven't in a minute. And that financial topic is saving and how I managed to start saving. And this will be prior to getting married. And I'll talk a little bit about how I save now in marriage. It's a tad bit different than most people. Some people will not agree, but it is what it is. I think everyone should at least make some degree of effort to begin some sort of saving regimen for later in life, because even though things seem good now, there will come a time where you're no longer working, you're no longer able to bring in income, and there's so many different ways that you can try to prepare yourself for that. Now, will you 100% prepare? Maybe. But we have no idea of what life will bring us. We don't know what will bring us health-wise. We don't know what it will bring us in other areas, even financially. So, because we can't control the economy. So it's really a roll of the dice, but you can be as prepared as you possibly can. So I'm just going to go down what I did to start saving. Let's go. My first introduction to saving was very small. I was struggling. I had my daughter. To give a little backstory on me, I grew up in the rural South. We did not have much money at all. I grew up in a single wide trailer in the country up a dirt road. And so we didn't have a whole lot of money, whole lot of funds even coming up. My parents did the absolute best that they could, but my mom did things like she would save her coins in a coin jar. That is how I got like my prom stuff and my graduation stuff. I did have my daughter at 17, so there was a whole other mouth to feed. I had to work simultaneously while finishing my senior year of high school. Although I did get a scholarship to go to school, I quit. After about 2 years, I quit school. So that avenue was no good for me at the time. I was not ready, and which that's a whole other topic for a whole other day. I've already discussed it before about how I feel that you should not go to college until you know that you are ready to commit to that and you have a plan for the financial tackling of that debt, because knowing what I know now, I probably would have done things a little bit differently. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. My mother did pass away when I was 21 years old. And when that happened, I had that family support system with my daughter, with her being there. But once she passed, my dad remarried. I really was kind of alone out there in the world. I had a series of unfortunate events, which was my own, number one, lack of financial literacy, and number two, trying to keep up with trends and the Joneses and etc. I lost where I was living. I did spend some time in my car, and then I spent time bouncing around from relative to relative, whoever would take me in, kind of couch surfing. It was a horrible, horrible experience. It traumatized me, and I think that experience, it fueled how I approached saving. Now, how I approached saving was I wanted to never have to ask anyone for anything. Like, that was my big thing. If I can handle everything that comes my way myself and not have to go to another family member or anyone to help me, that is what fueled me to start saving. I know that is probably not the healthiest of reasons to start saving, but I will admit that was my number one reasoning, was just to make sure that I was self-sufficient and that I could handle anything that came my way. Now, what happened was I ended up getting myself in a ton of credit card debt because I was experiencing life experiences. I had no emergency savings, so I was using my credit card almost as my emergency fund, which ballooned and caused me a whole other host of problems. So number one, to start saving, I would say try not to end up in the credit card debt trap, because that trap will hinder you from making significant progress in your savings goals. Because you have all this money going out to credit card payments that could be in your account building interest, or in your 401k if you have one at your job. What I did first was start tackling my credit card debt. Now, I have a video on how I would start tackling credit card debt. I have a video on how I started my debt-free journey as well. And so those videos will kind of show you the plan that I used to get out of that debt. But once I got out of that debt and freed that money, that is what I used for my initial savings. Now, while I was doing this, while I was paying off my debt, I started off with $5 a pay period. Now, I know that sounds so minute, like $5. What in the world is that going to do? Sacrificing a coffee could probably give you that in today's time. But I put that $5 into a savings account, and I would put that every paycheck faithfully. My goal wasn't necessarily to build a huge savings fund at that time. My goal was to train my mind to not touch it, because my first problem was that it wasn't that I couldn't put money away. It was the fact that I couldn't keep my hands off of it. I wanted to take it out. At some point in time, I would reach for it and take it out. And so the $5 initially was not only to save, but to train my brain to not touch the money, to leave it there. So I did that for about a year. I would say I was about 26, maybe 26 years old. And I did that for about a year. And I ended up at the end of the year with like $300 and some in there. It was something like that. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough that if I got a flat tire, I could replace my tire. It was enough where if a bill was a little bit higher than I anticipated, that I had that fund there to try to take care of that. So I had a foundation of, okay, I had the ability to put money somewhere and not touch it. Okay. At the time, I did have an employer that had a 403B. That is the equivalent of a 401k for like a nonprofit, because I worked in nonprofits before I started my current job. I did decide, okay, I need to start contributing to that. And I contributed the minimum that I could contribute to get the match. And I want to say that contributing the minimum to get the match is where I would start. And I stayed there for many years. Now, that job that I had in nonprofit, it was only for about 3 years, I would think. At 29 is when I started at my current job, and I have been there ever since. So I know that that is, not the norm either, but I have been with my job for going on 18 years now. It'll be 18 years in June. And so yeah, there's that. But initially, I started with that job putting in the minimum. Now, what I did at the end, when I started my current job, I wiped that out. So I was starting all over at 30, around 30 years old, 29, 30 years old. I was starting all over. I did go back to contributing the 3% that I could get a match on when I started my current job. And I tapped into it. I did. I took out, I think, 2 401k loans against that. And I actually went back and did the calculation on what I would have had if I had left that money alone. Because I think people think about just the sum of money they're taking out. They're like, oh man, I would have had, let's say it was 10K. I would have had 10K more. No. Depending on when you took it out and how long it's been, you would have had the 10K plus any compounding that you had received. So I took $10,000 and it could be 30, 40, 50 by now. I really messed up in doing that. So I would advise, if you're going to do your 3% or your 6% or whatever your company matches, at least try to do the match, at least. But even if you can't do the match, do something and build your way up to the match. And then once you get there, don't touch it. Don't touch that money. Leave it there. It's going to be some hard times. I have gone through the '08 crash. I have gone through some horrible economic times along the way. I am 48 years old. So I have seen some trying times. And if you cannot touch that money, even when it declines, it will recover. It will recover. So that is my second little tip, is just once you get to a place where you have a 401k, a 403b, something like that, at least try to contribute what your company will match. If your company does not match, you have options. You can either contribute what you can to your individual plan without the match, or you can look into other options like a Roth at your local bank, credit union, etc., and try to use that for your savings. That is still a legitimate form of retirement account. Like you could still go there. You can control your retirement, whether or not you get that match from your employer. The match is just kind of an icing on the cake kind of thing. But if you do get a match from your employer, I would say take that, because that is pretty much free money on the table. And I want every bit of free money I can get. All right, so each year, I told you about starting with the $5. Each year I would increase that. I think the next year I went to 10 or either 25. I'm not really sure, per pay period. And I just kept building from there. And once I got married, he was not very financially savvy. And so a lot of the things that I learned about finances came from, one, working in the field, because that's the field I worked in the nonprofit sector, and also just a bunch of reading. I just dove into books and just learned everything that I possibly could learn. And so once we got married and we decided to have separate finances, first out of necessity initially when we got married, and there's a whole story behind that, but we initially had to have separate finances for like housing and stuff like that. But over time we just kept that because it worked for us. And what I did at that time is formed a joint savings. That's a savings for anything our house would require, anything that we needed for bills, anything we needed for taxes, any sort of home emergency. We have our own separate emergency fund. And then we have our individual savings. I don't know. I'm not sure how much he saves, because I'm not really, the money that we keep for our personal selves, I don't police that at all. Because I don't want mine policed, but I am a saver. And so I was able to bump up my savings, and I started my different individual funds, my car fund, my fund money fund, which is my FU fund, and then my additional I call it a backup emergency fund, and eventually a small little brokerage account as well. And that came over time. And the reason why I say that came over time, I mean, when we got married, I think we were both making, let's see, I made 36. I think he made 34 when we got married. It was a total combined 70K that we made together when we first got married. And you got to understand, I had a daughter that was about to finish high school. Well, she wasn't about to finish high school, but she had her high school years and then, eventually college. So that's where we started. And so we had to have a plan. We had to have a way to kind of make sure that we had all our ducks in a row so that if something happened, we would be able to handle it. And that's what we did. We started contributing a portion to our emergency fund that is considered a joint, almost like a joint bill. We just contribute equally to it. And then we each have our individual savings if we would like to have one. I do. I have a bunch of different savings buckets. And I started off just still that same gradual step up, step up, step up, step up, whatever I could contribute. Also, for my retirement, I also was stepping up. So each year when I would get a raise, instead of taking the raise home in my pay, I would take that money and put it in my 401k instead. And that was probably after a few years. So I kept it the minimal match for quite a while. Most of my 30s, I would say, because like I said, I had my daughter going to college, didn't really know what the expenses there were going to be. And so once that was out of the way, or we had our clear path there, I started diverting my raises to my 401k and not taking it in my pay. That is a sacrifice. It is a very hard sacrifice too, because I have literally been taking home the same take-home pay, or nearly the same take-home pay, for a very, very long time. A very long time, at least a decade or more. I just keep the exact same take-home pay, or as close to it as I can get. And everything, every whole percentage over that for every raise that I've gotten in a decade has gone to my 401k. That is something that if you can get there, if you can find a happy spot where you can pay your bills, you're comfortable. Whenever you get there, if you could stop yourself from taking more money into your pay and putting that instead into your retirement, I would suggest doing that, because it's helped me to build up my percentage over time. And it's taken time, but it builds up and builds up and builds up over time. And you get more and more acclimated to using the same amount of money to get things done. And as I paid off my debt, I paid off my student loan recently. I've paid off all of the credit card debt and everything else that I had. Once those were gone, it's even more. It's even more free money to just utilize and save. So then I would just divert that to my individual savings brackets. And yes, I do keep fund money. I do keep money that if I want to do something for myself, that I can. My husband does the same. I think it's important because you can get so wrapped up and invested in saving that you're not living. And I want to live. Like, I want to do things that I want to do. I don't want to be confined. Although I think, this is just a personal opinion, I think it is an entirely good thing, especially if you are young, 20s, 30s, that you have a period of deprivation. that you have a period where you're not doing anything except paying your bills and saving money for a little while, even if it's just 1 year. I think if you could sacrifice that, just that little small amount of time, you would put yourself miles ahead. And then it frees you up to live kind of how you want to live. That is just me. Some people are not with it, but that's just my thoughts on it. So just as a recap, if you are on your savings journey, my suggestions, this is just from my personal experience, this is not financial advice, is to start small. Whatever you can put in, I don't care if it's $1, I don't care what it is. Start small. Train your mind to not touch that money. When it comes to your retirement, at least try to do the company match if you have a plan at your employer, just so that you could get the extra money that they will contribute to match. If you cannot do that, at least contribute something and build your way up. Start slow and build. Build whatever you can, whatever little extra money that you can put to it, do that. Don't get overwhelmed by thinking that you have to have this exorbitant amount of money that you put aside. It's not realistic for the vast majority of Americans. It's not realistic that you can fork over thousands of dollars. But over time, you'd be surprised at how much you can fork over if you gradually increase. You get a pay raise. Try to start off with, let's say you got a 3% raise. Start off with just taking 1% of that and putting that toward your 401k and just building that over time. Start small, work your way up. And don't forget you. Don't forget yourself. You have to have some enjoyment in this life when you can. I'm not saying that you should be balling out of control every day. I'm just saying you have to have some joy in there too. Because if you put too much focus on just paying bills and saving, you're forgetting to live. And that's what we're here for. So I hope this is somewhat beneficial. It may not be, I can't tell you how to allocate your money, but I can tell you some steps that I have used to kind of build my savings over the years, and how starting with just a small little amount got me to a place where I could contribute more and more and more. It will involve some sacrifice. It will involve some, oh, I can't do this right now, but I can save for it. Look at your goals as that. I may not be able to do it right now, but I have the potential to get there, to get what I want if I just put a little effort to save for it. That's really all I got for today, and I will talk to you guys soon. Don't forget my 75 hard challenge updates. I am trying my best to get those out too. It's a challenge for sure. So check out Oslin Original. She is on a journey with me. Check out Dr. Ninja Turtle, Make Life Make Sense. All of us are doing a challenge of some sort. May it be at 75 hard, 75 soft, or just 75 days of consistency. And I will talk to you guys soon. Have a great one.